Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who kept us going for over 450 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is P1 Falchion. Thank you, P1 Falchion.
Isn't it player one Falcon? I don't know,
well,
it's a sword.
The word is Falchion, and it's a type of it's a mix between, it's basically a giant machete. It's like a heavy-duty sword for chopping through other swords.
I'm pretty sure this has got to be some Fire Emblem reference, since that's where I think I first read about that sword, but I don't know how to pronounce it, so...
Well, now I feel like maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Falchion.
Well, the game was text, so it's not like they said it out loud.
Shit. Am I saying it wrong?
I don't know.
Well, I guess you can let us know, dude. Please do. But been due to the week before, been with us for I think at least a year now. So thank you so much. We've got news. There's news. It's been a heavy news week.
Yeah, like we recorded right before, and we were like, hey, you know, like 2 days from what's supposed to be. So it's reveal Switch 2 got revealed. I guess everyone's kind of talked about it at this point. I want to try to we'll obviously we're gonna talk about it. We have to, but like I also want to like try to avoid being highly speculative. I would rather be completely guessing, like just like wish casting, dream casting, than speculating too much. I mean, because we could do the speculation all day and whatever. We have no rumors, we have no insights, you know. We got really nothing to go on or whatever. You know, I made a bingo card, but I'm like, man, I mean, we're either going to talk about what we're going to go like two ends here. I say I'm just proposing this now. We talk about facts. We talk about not rumor, not speculation, just complete wild wish, dream fulfillment. Like no in between.
Well, I did a little ruminating and made my own rumors, made my own. So that'll be around in a couple of days on the tubes. But yeah, there is part of the reason I did that whole video and why I made that joke on the Blue Sky is there is no factual, like you got people out there right now being like, oh, there's no gimmick, it didn't innovate, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, that is definitely something that it was funny because I saw like a number, like 3 like news outlets or media, mostly from Europe, decrying that there was no gimmick. And then immediately I and a couple others were like, what is wrong with you? And then the outlash got so bad that then other news outlets they made their own editorials, decrying the editorials, whining about no. So it just became like this like circle of like people just like yelling at each other between them. And it's like, they'll be okay. First,
and I'm adding to that.
First of all, this is nowhere near the first time Nintendo did a strictly power-based upgrade. Okay, this is nowhere near the first time Nintendo just did a power jump, more or less.
Yeah, famously the NES to the Super
NES. Like they added they added 2 face buttons and 2 shoulder buttons. I mean, they added buttons, but that's not
what a gimmick.
That's not an innovation. So
no, it's not. Well, it's also like people go like, oh, there's no gimmick, but Nintendo's done gimmicks before, but almost always they're like later editions. Rob the Robot Friend and the Nintendo Blaster came out later. It wasn't like that was a launch thing.
Well, okay, you're correct and you're incorrect. You are 100% correct that Rob was later from Japanese standpoint. For an American standpoint, he was the launch, right? But that was 2 years after the Famicom had been around,
and also wasn't like they didn't say like, oh, in order to get anything out of the NES, you gotta get Rob. Rob wasn't the selling point.
Well, like, kind of was.
If you're going to make a gimmick, it's got like the Wii couldn't be sold without the Wiimote. Wiimote. Like you couldn't just get a regular remote control for the Wii.
Rob's interesting because Rob was, the reason Rob exists was to put it in the toy aisle.
Right.
because like Atari was sold as an like a electronic entertainment product, and Nintendo pretty much assumed that, okay, well, no one's going to stock this in in their electronics section. We're going to go to the toy aisle. Here's a toy robot, and it works with your TV. So
Well, that's one thing that Nintendo has always there's only two times yeah, maybe two times where Nintendo has slipped up on this. Nintendo has always made the key distinction that they aren't tech. They
yeah,
don't say that they're toys anymore necessarily, but they go out of their way to make sure you don't look at them as tech. They aren't a tech product. They're an
yeah,
entertainment
they're
product.
entertainment. I mean, yeah, like
And
they're entertainment if anything.
right, and it's like that's again, I'm retreading stuff I said in this video, but my whole point is like we don't know anything about like one. There could be a gimmick. We don't know.
Well, there is, and we actually saw it.
Well,
We
yeah,
actually
it's the
saw it.
mouse
It's the
thing.
mouse,
Yeah,
which
but
that could actually lead to some really interesting things.
I wouldn't even call that a gimmick. Like when I think of a gimmick, I think of like a hook purely to get you through the door to get you to buy the
Mm.
thing. Rob
Yeah,
was like a play to get you to buy the thing.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, a mouse or a new type of controller isn't a gimmick to me. That's just an advancement of an idea. And we're talking about 20 years of Nintendo chasing the same idea of you can bring our console over to your friend's house and play with your friends.
yeah.
That's the GameCube did. I mean, really, it's like the N64 was the first one where they really tried to do that because you remember the N64 satchel that you had, like
Yeah.
it sat inside perfect, and you had the
Mhm,
4
mhm.
controller stuff, and then you had the GameCube had a handle on it, and then
Yeah.
you know all the Switch is sort of that. It's a continuation of the same thought process they've had for 20 plus years now, 28 years now. You know, um, anybody that's like, oh yeah, the Switch was a new gimmick. Switch wasn't a gimmick. It was just an evolution of the exact same thought process
Yeah,
they
I mean,
had.
and they said this 8 years ago now, where they're like, the Switch is basically taking a little bit of everything from our history, everything from Nintendo up to here. It's taking we tried to like incorporate something. Like they're not trying to say like we're creating a brand new idea. We're creating something that sort of uses all the ideas we've had.
Right. And did they drop the ball by not calling it a Super Nintendo Switch? Maybe. Will this sell better being called the Switch 2? Probably, definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
like,
exactly, exactly.
like in my mind, like yeah, I probably would have pushed for like a Super Nintendo Switch just for the callback. But from a marketing perspective, a sales perspective, Switch 2 immediate. It's like, yes,
Yeah,
this is the next Switch. Great.
no more being clever, no more taking risks on your
Right.
naming conventions. It's Switch 2. This is the first time Nintendo's actually copied Sony.
And again, we don't know anything really about this system yet, not anything confirmed. So all these people that are out there, you know, telling you this is my favorite one that I've seen so far. Oh, well, when it doesn't sell as much as the Switch 1, you'll know why. And it's like, well, it's definitely not going to sell as much as the Switch 1 because the Switch 1 had so many tailwinds on it that like it was like an act of God for how much support that it got. Like there's no way, and the Switch 2 is not going to fail. But the
Yeah,
Switch 2, there's no
exactly.
way it's going to hit Switch 1 numbers. And it's not even me saying it. There's much smarter guy. Jason Schreier, St. Matt Piscatello, whose whole job is numbers, is saying that. Like it's like I wish I was the guy purely saying that because then when I was right, I would look like a genius. But I'm not.
Right, because that's the thing. Is like, okay, look, the PlayStation 4 sold more than the PS3, but the PS4 didn't come anywhere close to the sales of the PS2.
Right.
It was more closer along the lines of the PS1. Like it might have been better than I think it's better than PS1, but like the PS5 is maybe going to sell as well as the PS4, or maybe it won't. Is that
If
going to
it
make the
goes
PS?
long enough, I guess.
Or my point is the PS4 and the PS5 a failure because they didn't outsell the PS2? No, it's the PS2 was the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
With the right
and
tech, like boom.
it's hard to describe like especially like I keep saying like 16-year-olds on the internet. They're probably not 16-year-olds. There's probably plenty of smart 16-year-olds. I'm picking on them because they deserve it. But also, I'm just it's a number I'm pulling out of my head. But they're making these like, oh yeah, when I was 8 and the Nintendo Switch came out, it was the gimmick that sold me, so they have to have a gimmick now that I'm 16 or I won't buy it. And it's like it's so ignorant of history and also all of marketing and sale. Like,
Yeah, I can't believe a 16-year-old who lives in the age of the phone and the minimal yearly upgrade to a phone would somehow have a problem with the Switch 2 not being, you know,
and
a
yet it,
completely different idea.
and granted, it could also be like somebody in their 60s. I just have a hard time believing that someone like 30 to 50, you know, uh, early or late stage, or yeah, I guess it would be like early Gen Z all the way through, you know, Gen X was all around long enough to know like how this stuff works just by going into a Target. Like
Yeah.
I'm not even, you know, I'm not pretending I have some like hidden knowledge. I'm just saying like you went to GameStop several times. You probably know generally how this works. Uh Someone who got the Switch as a Christmas present when they were 9, 10, and now are like just entering into paying attention. This is another thing that's weird is when we were growing up, we got all these magazines that sort of explained the
Yeah.
you know it didn't shine a light on business necessarily, but like you got more of it than now where like most, I would say like the teenage range who are really into gaming, they watch like a YouTuber or, and I'm going to say like the majority of the YouTubers that do gaming don't necessarily delve into why something works or how it works. It's mostly like critical slash let's play type stuff. Like there's nobody sitting here going like, well, there's nobody referencing Matt Piscatella.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, but when we were reading PSM, like you might actually read the sales numbers for a PlayStation.
And it's frustrating too because I see this. I actually have no idea what the status is. There was a YouTuber who was very big. He's probably still very big. Um, I haven't actually seen his name or heard anything come up from him in a while. I don't actually don't know the status, but they were. I don't even want to say what exactly they're complaining about, but they're complaining about certain things in a licensed game, right?
Mm,
And saying, very emotionally, invested in it. And it's kind of like, well, they don't there's and it's not even because, like, say the game he's ranting about, um like, the developers didn't want to do it, or aren't doing what he wanted. It was like, okay, but it's a license thing. Like, there's a lot of like, just even for very well known, popular YouTubers, they may not know how copyright management and IP management and licensing works, and how much of a
yeah.
crazy thing. 'Cause here's the thing: this was before his first movie came out, right? Like, like people didn't even know that there was going to be a movie. I don't even think the movie was announced, right? I, I could be wrong, but I'm talking about Marvel's Capcom 3. Doctor
Right.
Strange was a character in there,
Yeah.
and I can tell someone at Marvel really liked Doctor Strange. Someone with power at Marvel really liked Doctor Strange. And I think they talked about, I believe, I'm pretty sure this was discussed at like a Comic-Con panel or something. So I don't think I'm speaking out of line here, but like there was a point where he was the hardest to get anything done because, one, the character had to be in the game. Because
Right.
someone high up at Marvel really wanted Doctor Strange. That's not a problem. But the size, how tall he is, and what he's doing, every single frame of animation had extremely harsher scrutiny on it and approval than anyone else in the game or any other one from Marvel. So this is like an example of, like, when you're making a licensed game, you may end up with someone from the company you're licensing the game from who's going to be extremely particular about how a character they particularly really like is handled. So it's like, well, why is this character get so much love versus this character? Because the owner was being really like, was like really kind of like, I want this, I want that, I want X, I want Y, I want Z. So
Well, I mean, our first taste of that kind of scrutiny came when we were making Assist Me.
right.
When we were doing the ones that Capcom ordered, and
Yeah.
we were doing like Rocket stuff. But then like when we did Retro, there was the whole you can't show this character, you can't. I don't know how
Right.
much we can get into it, but the point is like there was a whole bunch of hoops we had to jump into that
Yeah,
like
they went through a Marvel. There was someone from Marvel whose job is to check everything, and they scrutinized the script. They scrutinized the footage, the video footage before it went live. Like we had to make major changes. Like
they were.
it,
I just remember they were mad that we somehow knew that Thanos was going to be the villain. They were like, who told you that Thanos was going to be the villain?" And because this came out before Thanos was even announced. This
yeah,
is
I
before
was under,
Avengers
I
1.
was I was under the impression that they were like, okay, we have not revealed what Thanos looks like yet, so we do not want you showing his face on camera because we have not officially revealed what the MCU version of Thanos is going to look like.
Right, and they hadn't even announced that Thanos was gonna be the villain of the Avengers,
I
and I
can't
remember
remember.
we got like one nobody was mad. I just remember we got like uh this one question where someone was like, "Who told you Thanos was gonna be?" And it was like one of those like nobody's making a threat, but it does seem like somebody's angry. And it was like we just did it on a whim. Like dude shoots bubbles. It's very funny. He's a good Biff character. But they were like, there was like this one. I distinctly remember there just being like this, like who leaked that to you? Nobody leaked it. We chose them on a whim. Yeah, like most
And
YouTubers aren't going to talk about things like that. Like,
yeah,
that's
and,
not,
and on the flip side, regarding retrospect, when we said we wanted to turn Captain Commando into Biff Tannen, Capcom's response was awesome. Like they owned the character, and
yeah,
they're like, "Hey, we want to do this with Captain Commando." That's great. They're like, "Cool, awesome, whatever." You're using our character, that we haven't heard of in forever, and that was for retro.
yeah.
So it's just kind of like cool, whatever. Like just when it was like when you own a character and it's your project,
So
suddenly
much easier. Yeah.
so much easier to do. So yeah, that's like I know that's kind of a weird example there, but I see this happen all the time where people are like like the whole kind of like what are they thinking? Why are they so dumb? I'm like, man, sometimes it's not about what's the obvious thing, but sometimes it's like, man, your hands are tied, like with what you can and can't do, like what companies can and can't do, say, get away with.
Yeah, and there's like one dumb guy in particular that is holding everything up, making everyone look dumb.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
sometimes it's some obscure copyright law that they can't break.
I mean, I've said this
Yeah.
forever. It's I know, other people who've worked with Nintendo and are no longer, which is actually not a lot of people, but those who have and have spoken out, not even spoken out, but just offered clarity, would tell you this is not known. There are a lot of old gatekeepers, if you will, really old people in Nintendo who hold veto power over many things. So it can be very, very difficult for Nintendo to get anything done, even if they have the same idea that you have. They have to get like a the dinosaurs of the round table approval.
Like a straight up 80-year-old dude who's had veto because his clan signed a contract. I don't know if this is actually true. This is one thing that I like had read is because Nintendo is so old and it was a family business, like literally a clan
Yes,
business for
yes.
a long time. Like there are people involved at executive levels and shareholder level that were literal clans. And I don't know how like that they
Here's the funny thing. I actually I know for certain many Japanese game companies have specific ties. The only one I actually don't know is Nintendo, and I just figured that like they don't have ties because they are the clan.
Yeah. Well,
They are the Toho clan themselves because
it's
they're just that old and they were a family run business all the way till Iwata. So
it's one of those things where you're like Japan. There's a lot of reasons people in the West are obsessed with Japan. Some of them are, I mean, so terrible. But
also, I want to
uh,
make sure that everyone who's again in the age of disinformation, when we say clan, we're talking about Yakuza clans, not any,
yeah,
not the clan. You know,
right, yeah, yeah, like clans, like families, and
yeah.
possibly Yakuza. Um, but like Japan is one of those places that because it was isolationist for so long, that it has just so many eccentricities isn't the right word, but it has so many like cultural quirks to where you could spend your entire life trying to like learn as much as you want, but if you weren't born there and didn't weren't raised in it, there's just so many things that you're just like you're going to be shocked and awed by, confused by. um
Unless you're like me, or I'm gonna just go on a limb here and assume like you as well, where you hear about it and you go, oh, okay. So like
well,
a
yeah,
cultural custom or a quirk, you hear about it, you're in Japan, you're like, don't do this, do that. And you're like, okay, and we just do it and we roll with it and we're fine. We don't sit there and let the culture shock like, why is it like this? It's like when you're in Japan and you notice there are no trash cans anywhere on you
yeah,
go in the city and you're just like, what am I supposed to do? Like, am I just supposed to like carry the trash? Like, yeah, you carry it until you get to a 7-Eleven and throw it away or whatever. Like, be aware of that. Well, why do they do it this way? Whatever. It just is what it is. Hey, there's not a lot of trash cans. Be mindful of that when walking around a city. You and I would be like, okay, cool. I'll keep that in mind. And other
yeah.
people will just be like, well, what the fuck, man? What am I supposed to do about it? Like,
The only time that I have ever not that I've ever screwed up in that way where like I just did not follow. We were in Paris and this is already enough. Now, French people, uh wonderful. Parisians sort of have a bad reputation, but for the most part, every Parisian I met, pretty great. Um, except one. And we had bought ice cream, and I don't speak any French at all. And I tried, but Parisians they'll they will mock you to your face. So it's like you sort of just give up. Um and I normally I learn a bunch of phrases and stuff, and I did, but apparently my French is just so god awful that they would make fun. So we bought ice cream at this little shop, and next to the shop, like literally right next to the shop, is a bunch of little tables. So we bought the ice cream, we sat down. That seems totally normal, right?
those little tables weren't for that ice cream shop, were they?
Huge faux pas. Apparently, you don't sit down to eat ice cream, and those tables were for the lunch section of the same shop, just a different window.
Mm.
And this guy like came screaming at us to like it because apparently he like he made some signal that I just did not pick up that was to be like, oh, you can't sit there, and I did not for the life of me. I don't know. So he got like extremely confrontational, was like yelling at me in broken English, calling me an idiot. And I'm just like, I don't understand. So I almost hit a man with an ice cream cone until I figured out we're not allowed to sit there because he never, he didn't speak enough English to say like you can't sit there. And I just was not understanding. And so he just kept swatting me with a menu saying idiot. And I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna hit you with this ice cream cone. And that is my one time where I was just like, I did not pick up on it. And then later I felt very righteous and being like, fuck that guy. I don't care about that.
All right, you know what's been just enough. Like, I'm gonna find a box car in a rail yard, and I'm gonna make you sign a treaty if you don't get off me right now.
It makes,
That's a terrible joke, by
that
the
is a
way.
terrible joke.
Especially to tell the Parisian.
But going back to what I was saying before is like Japan is one of those places where like if I were to say that about like, oh yeah, Ubisoft is a 100-year-old family and they're actually connected to nobility, and you're like, yeah, okay, it is technically the same family that controls Ubisoft, but like you'd never believe me for a minute that they had signed like treaties to other noble families to bring them into Ubisoft to, but that is apparently a thing and is totally believable about Nintendo. I don't know that it's true. I'm just saying that's like it is apparently a
Well,
believable rumor.
here's like a crazy one is people don't know this. Well, one of the heads of Nintendo of America at the start was Minoru Arakawa, who was the son-in-law of Yamauchi, and I believe I don't know if it was Yamauchi himself or Yamauchi's father, the second or third generation that ran Nintendo, right? Hiroshi Yamauchi was the third generation. He was there
Mhm.
for Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and 64. Anyways, either him or his father are not from the Yamauchi bloodline. Because one of them had a daughter and they married someone else. They adopted the daughter's last name and were propped up by the father, father of the bride, if you will. They took on the daughter's last name. They were basically groomed by the in-law to become a Yamauchi and run Nintendo as a Yamauchi.
Yeah,
So
that is wild and interesting. And
like that's how much power in a way, like that's how much power the Yamauchi clan held, was that when one of their heirs only gave birth to a daughter, when that daughter married, that man became a Yamauchi. Forego his last name, forego his family name. If you're marrying into this clan, you are taking our name, and you're going to run it at like us, kind of thing.
they made card games.
And Arakawa, by the way,
It's just
is from that other side of the family.
interesting.
So and he ran the Nintendo of America side, and he still was an Arakawa. But that's why Minoru Arakawa was actually never considered. One reason he's never considered to run the company after Yamauchi.
And again, you're just like, "Wha- what a crazy, it's working for him. I'm not saying it's not working for him. I'm just saying, like, could you imagine pitching that as a business strategy to a shareholder? Like, if you went to a board in the United States and you were just like, oh, yeah, and then my son will take over. And they're like, what? Is
Yeah,
he qualified? Yeah, he's my son.
which this is actually what made the transfer of power to Iwata kind of somewhat significant. Um, because Yamauchi, for whatever reason, didn't even believe in his own offspring's ability to run his company.
Well, yeah, I never really. Was it that his offspring was so bad, or was it that Iwata was so good?
Well,
Because
I think it's more of the latter than the former. I actually don't even know if I can look it up real quick. But he he specifically wanted Iwata. He was handpicked by Iwata was handpicked by Yamauchi. Yamauchi wanted Iwata, and he even said there was a point where like Hal was not doing super well, and like he basically offered to save Hal Laboratories, I believe. I think I'm getting this right. And he said, on the condition you will run Nintendo when I retire. So Yamauchi was like, he like for some reason, because even though Iwata was a programmer, but Yamauchi was like, like for some reason, whatever Yamauchi saw in him was like, you need to run the company because I don't want to do this anymore. And because he was getting really old and he never even played video games, which was the one thing I found funny in the Tetris movie. There's a point where like they show Yamauchi playing Tetris and going like, yes, we should sign for this game. I'm like, he would never do that. Like he was proud of the fact that he didn't play video games.
we didn't even go into wild dream rumors, and we're
He
halfway
does
into the
have a
episode.
he had 3 children.
Busy man,
But
or
yeah, no.
busy wife if he wasn't around. You don't really know, with a family like that. I would imagine still quite formal. So I don't really know how involved he was. He wasn't going to any of his kids' baseball games, probably.
Yeah. Well, his daughter. I'm sorry. Let me clarify here. Yamauchi's daughter is the one who married Minoru Arakawa. Um, but he
Okay.
did. But even though he had a daughter and she married this other guy, Minoru, who was running Nintendo of America, he didn't. He didn't ask him or want him to run the company after him, which
Hmm.
is interesting when you really think about it.
Well, it's like, it was Arakawa bad?
No, not at all. Actually,
Then maybe it's not even. Maybe it's more like we're giving it more weight than it actually has.
yeah.
Like if he sucked, then you're like, well, I
I mean,
I
there's a
get it.
really interesting history here. Just like getting a quick here, Yamauchi offered Arakawa the job of establishing Ton of America, while looks like his wife opposed the position, having seen the impact of the company on her father's life. Arakawa did accept the offer, so that's that's a weird thing. Where like his daughter was like, "Don't get involved in the family business," and he did. But it sounds like that was a kind of a strained thing there. So there's an interesting story there.
Hmm. Well, speaking of other interesting stories, unless you want to go into some wild speculation, you want to do some wild
Um,
speculation. Nothing based in fact, or I made a couple predictions.
Well, I
But
mean, okay, look, we talked briefly about the fact that it's probably has mouse, it has like mouse support, or its Joy Cons can become mice, kind of like the
Mhm.
Lenovo Legion Go, and I think that's actually really cool. Personally speaking, Max was right though when he told me like this is going to have very limited use. How many people recreationally are playing their Switch on a desktop, like on a desk
Right.
with a desk mat to like maneuver around in? And I'm like, yeah, that's true. I'm like, it's going to be it's going to be very situational, and it will be because that's why I think they're not like basing the whole system, like the whole feature of the system on it can be a mouse. Um, but I think it's going to be an addendum. If you know, if it's like it's a little added bonus. This is going to make online competition really interesting in my mind. Really interesting. Because here's the thing: you're going to see, because legally, and I've already heard this from people who work within the companies of Activision, that like legally they have to put Call of Duty on the Switch. It was part of the agreement, you know,
Huh.
with the FTC made, you know, for the sale of Activision. This is going to make things so interesting to me because you're going to have a $400 system that is going to be running, say, Warzone or Blop 6 or whatever the next Call of Duty is, right?
Right.
And a chunk of these Switch 2 players are going to be playing with a mouse, natural mouse support. So suddenly, oh, these filthy keyboard mouse players, you know, they're so good. I'm like, oh, suddenly Switch 2 players are going to be some of the best players in any given crossplay lobby for a first person shooter.
See, I think they're gonna get wrecked because I don't think there's a keyboard mouse advantage really anymore. But
Oh, there is.
not
Oh,
not
there's
not as much as look,
for aiming for sure there is.
if you are at the top of your game and the other guy is at the top of his game, and one of you is playing on controller and the other is playing on mouse and keyboard, maybe it'll come down to mouse and keyboard. But there's so many other factors in how good somebody is at playing that just choosing to play on mouse and keyboard is not going to boost you.
My man,
It's not.
I
I've done both. I've done both, and I've done both competitively.
I'm telling you, those you can always tell when someone's playing with a keyboard mouse in any crossplay game. And it's so interesting because now Switch 2 players are going to become hated because you'll see on the kill cams they're going to have that crazy spastic, you know, mouse aim.
Yeah, but the mouse has to be good for it.
True, we're going to have to see how well that Joy-Con doubles as a mouse. How good is it? You know,
Yeah,
how
is the trigger like how the other thing is how big is the Joy-Con going to be? This is going to be an interesting change. The Joy-Con looks bigger,
it does.
which was a key problem with the original for like anybody with a big hand.
Yeah.
Um, if it's big enough, then yeah. But sitting on its side, I don't know. I think it's interesting because it opens up, yes, it opens up shooters, I suppose, but like
But think of
there's
it
things
this
that
way,
it
though,
opens up like
too.
Civ,
I
you
was
know.
going to say, like, think of how much better playing Civilization on this console is going to be from the other console versions.
Yeah, no, that's immediately I went to Civ or I went to other strategy games and stuff.
Age of Empires,
Yeah,
like this is it's not a huge genre, it's not a huge audience, and obviously, like it's only been the audience is literally exists only on PC and has for decades. But I think it's really interesting that you're going to have the ability to use mouse, like visual novels. In point and click games, they can have a huge resurgence. Maybe not even resurgence, because point and click, it's really not that big a deal to play with a controller. But just an easier way, just knowing that there's a much easier way to just navigate a point and click with a mouse, or a mouse like contraption with the Joy-Con. I think it's fascinating. I think it's a little downplayed, like how much fun or how cool it could be to finally
it's
take certain genres that never are, like, they might be okay, but they're never as good as a mouse. And now we have a mouse. We have a built-in mouse
it makes me
on the system now.
wonder. It makes me wonder what direction they're going to go with a first party game.
Right. And the obvious one everyone jumps to is Mario Paint, like a Mario Paint 2, which would be cool, don't get me wrong.
See, I
Mario
didn't
Paint 2
even
would be
think
great.
about a Mario like you mean like a Mario Sunshine?
No, Mario Paint.
Oh, like actual Mario Paint. See, I was thinking like a Mario Sunshine type situation where
Mhm.
it's like now the mouse is controlling whatever thing that Mario is using.
If anything, I think it's definitely going to be pushed for Splatoon 4.
Okay, I could see that. Yeah. I could totally see that. Um, I'm just not. I'm wondering because in my mind, so I'm not going to buy a Switch 2 at launch. Probably, we'll wait to see the games. Games push the hardware, never the other way around. But I'm probably not just because it's not the handheld size that I want, and I want it to be a handheld.
You want
So
smaller.
yeah, I do.
Mhm.
I want more. I want smaller form factor so that it is true handheld. I can actually take it with me places.
Right, right.
Part of the problem I had with the original Switch, I liked the original Switch, but I would go months at a time. This last time, I think it's been a year since I've really played it.
It's so interesting to me, like what everyone I know has basically different play times on different things. I play the Switch the most because I'm on a soft Monday. And I split stuff between my Xbox and my PlayStation. So I actually play my Xbox more than my PlayStation 5
Really?
because of Game Pass.
No, that's fair. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
I
so, and I have a couple free to play games like Fortnite and Naraka. I play on my Xbox, and I use my PlayStation for Call of Duty and Marvel Rivals. So I split it.
Marvel Rivals is holding up, huh?
It's
Like it's
Overwatch.
got
Like, look, man, I'm not gonna. Here's the thing. It's about Marvel Rivals. It is what it is. It ain't anything. It ain't anything truly groundbreaking or special or whatever. The only reason I'm even still playing it, one, I found a Punisher. I found more fun than Hella, and I'm okay with that. But I play it because people are playing it. Like
right.
I have a squad or a group of, like, 5 others I can jump in with. That's the only reason I'm playing. Would I play Marvel Rivals on my own or even with two people? Fuck no. I drop
Well,
it
I'm
fast.
just
But
saying it has way more staying power than I think there was a worry that it wouldn't, it'd be a flash in the pan where it would
well,
take more
here's the
gone.
thing. It came out what, early mid December. There's
Mhm.
not really been any major releases of anything since
Oh, that's
then.
true.
Let's see what happens. And I said, let's see what happens by the end of February, end of March, when you have games like Monster Hunter Wilds and some other big hitters that come out, in February, March. Let's see what happens then. Let's
Fair.
It's uncontested right now. I mean, there is still the standbys of, Fortnite and Roblox and what have you.
Which are all
Um,
still winning, but
yeah, of course. But, like, yeah, the thing is, we haven't. They're doing the best they can, which is they came out strong It was solid. It was well put together. There was a lot of characters. The characters are free. And let me reiterate that the characters are free. When Mr. Fantastic and Mrs. Fantastic came out, they were free. I played a couple rounds with Mr. Fantastic and said no, thank you. And then everyone else played Mrs. Fantastic because she has a huge ass.
I can't
Which,
fault that logic.
like, honestly, like the only thing that's upsetting to me is that, like, I think the guys need to have better asses. Like Wolverine, his costume is not really like a skin tight costume. It's more of like, jackets and jeans. So he doesn't have like a huge ass, and I'm very upset about that for Wolverine. I think Black Panther's like could have better. Venom's the only one with like a good ass on the guy side, and I think that's upsetting. I think we need more ass than just Venom, personally, and like because all the women's got big old fat asses, big fat ass, big, and I'm like, and they're selling off of this.
Yeah, I mean, I designed all the female characters. I designed all the characters. Why they all have really great asses.
like, there is someone I don't even remember. I don't even know who it was, but I just remember it was in like a Marvel Rivals thread, and they're like, "Look, man, I'm a little like it's a little disappointing every time they bring a new female. She throws magic balls and has a fat ass." I'm like, I'm not even upset about the ass. I just wish there was like more, and it's so true because so many of the female characters just sort of like throw magic out of their hands. Like Mrs. Fantastic does it, Cloak and Dagger does that, Luna Snow does that, Hella basically does it. They're knives, but she's still just like throwing magic knives out. Like they just throw magic out of their hands, and then
have
stuff
great asses.
happens.
Yeah,
And it's just big asses. But my point is that the characters are free. They have updated the game. They've updated free characters. They've added a new map. They're going to add another set of characters and another map soon, like really soon. So they're keeping on top of things. Where I thought when at launch, I'm like, man, there's really not enough maps, and I still think there's really not enough maps. But at least they already got a new map thrown in, and they're going to add another one soon. And they're adding new characters that don't charge you money for. They're only charging for the costumes, and I mean, it's kind of working. They have battle passes, and they say if you buy the battle pass, you can complete it whenever. We're not taking a lot of games like Fortnite included. When you buy a battle pass, you have to complete the battle pass in a set amount of time. Otherwise, you lose out on getting those rewards forever. Not so with Marvel Rivals. You buy a battle pass, and they're like, just do whatever you level up that battle pass at your convenience, and you will always get the reward for it.
the guy, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy that was running that project just seems like he actually played the field. Like he went and played the competition. He went and saw. I think oftentimes,
Yeah, I think he also said like, "Hey, man, we're lucky. We have the Marvel IP."
right?
And I'm like,
and he's doing everything right with it. It's one of those things where it's like game director. I wonder how many games do game directors get to really play? Because when you think about it, it's like their entire life becomes one game for a couple of years.
mhm.
Do they go home and then relax by playing games? I bet you not a lot of them. I bet you most of the time they don't go home and play
Some do.
games.
The worst is when a producer does.
Yeah, well,
And then a producer goes home, plays the thing. We need to put this in our game, and it's like, fuck.
it depends. It depends on the producer.
We have nothing in the game's engine or code meant to do whatever thing you say we now desperately need in our
You
game.
must have. Well, yeah, it's really terrible when the publisher does. When the publisher is like, it's got to have this, or we're not going to publish it, and they love to pull that line, I bet. But my point is like this guy clearly he went and played these games that he was going to be making of that genre, and was like, oh, this is everything wrong with that. We're just not going to do that.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that's what Yoshi P did for Final Fantasy 14. He plays MMOs. He likes MMOs. So he was very aware of what players wanted in MMOs, and that's why he's able to turn 14 around. It's become a weird punching bag, and I'm kind of on the team that does dunk on it, but I also feel a little bad, in regards to 16, Final Fantasy 16, where I'm like, okay, yes, I was disappointed with a lot of aspects of 16, but I wasn't disappointed with the combat, and I don't think it was a bad game, but
no, 16 wasn't bad. The places that it fell short were, I think, things that you really had only started to happen halfway through.
Yeah,
If that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
I didn't start to feel, any sort of disappointment until I was halfway through. And that was
Yeah.
I don't know, over half the game I was extremely happy about.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
win.
yeah.
Like, that's not a bad game. A bad game is like a game where you're like 10% in and you're sort of hoping something's going to turn around,
Mm.
you know? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. It Blasto. You know, like, if we're just being honest, there's so many things you want to like. You know what it is? It's a game, a disappointing game, a bad game from a taste perspective, not from just like
Mhm.
is a game where you keep wanting to like it, but you can't. You just, for whatever reason, you just can't. You're not.
Like Aliens, Colonial Marines.
Yeah, or Days Gone.
Dang.
No, I'm not that. Look, I'm saying from a taste perspective. Days Gone from a tech perspective and an achievement perspective, like, yeah, it's on paper, that game is everything. I should love everything about it. I don't. I'm more angry than anyone else could be because I want to like it. People who are all like, yeah, it needs to get a sequel. And
Speaking
I'm like,
of, we didn't talk about this, and we should. I feel we should. We have to talk about this a little bit. The cancellation of Sony Ben's and Blue Point's game, as Shar pointed out, we both learned.
yeah.
So after Days Gone, we didn't really know what Sony Bend was doing. Well, now we kind of know what they're doing, and we never knew what Blue Point was doing after they got bought. Blue Point was making a multiplayer live services God of War game for some god unknown reason.
And the thing
And
is,
Bend was also doing a multiplayer live service, and both were canceled.
pitch me a God of War live services multiplayer game.
I can't because it's a stupid idea.
Yeah, well, what my point is like there's nothing about it. Could there be an idea that I just can't think of that is yes, right? But in my mind, a live services game should sell itself. The concept of the live services game should be something that you can easily go like, ah, yes,
Right. I
if
mean,
you want it to do well.
all things aside, Helldivers 2 was it's Starship Troopers.
Done. You get it immediately. You're into it.
Okay.
And I'm not saying, I'm not saying that it can't be complex or that a live services game can't be complex. I'm just saying that if you want it to make sense or if you want it to sell, in my opinion, for a live services game specifically, a multiplayer live services game, you got to be able to sell it in what 10 words or less.
Yeah.
You know,
Elevator
uh,
pitch, man.
yeah, okay, yeah, we'll give it 25 words or less. Log lines, every screenwriter's favorite. Um, But like, yeah, it's a live services multiplayer God of War game. What do you do? What do you hit each other? Is it going to be like a hero shooter where you're playing as Kratos or one of the gods, or and you're fighting each other, or is it like four-person co-op kind of
Right.
like, yeah, like there is options there. None of them seem that appealing. I'm not really sure. And also, why would you buy Blue Point to make them do something they've never done before?
Why would Sony Ben be put on task to do something they've never done before? Why was Naughty Dog so insistent on doing something they'd never done before? Like, I mean, they've done multiplayer, but they've never done live service multiplayer. And they've never done a whole game around it. Like,
Well, yeah, it's Jim, sweet Jim, doing everything must be live services before
right.
he
And
got out.
a lot of people are saying, like, oh, the failure of Herman Hulst. Herman Hulst. I'm like, bro, games are decided 5 to 10 years in advance.
Yeah, none of this
Honestly,
is his call.
mostly 10. This is all little Dick Jim. This is all his call and doing here. Remember when he famously said they're going to have 12 live service games in development on the PS5?
Yeah, and he got a resounding "ha" back. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Do you remember a single person that was excited by that statement?
No.
I can't think of like, and there's content creators that their whole shtick is just being pro whatever their particular, I'm an Xbox boy, Xbots. What is it? It's Xbox, it's bronies, and it's Nintendogs. What are we calling each of these? Sony
So
bronies?
they're called Sony ponies.
Sony ponies. There we go.
I don't know why.
Sony
It just
ponies,
hardly seems like
Xbots, and
Nintendo drones.
Nintendo drones. Come on, Nintendogs. It's better. I'm trying to make that
Drones.
a thing for too long.
Nintendo dogs need to just talk about a game. They're called drones.
I hate it.
Anyways,
Cute.
let's break this down. Here are the 12 games. Arrowhead Game Studios was making Helldivers 2, released last year, was successful. Bend Studio, an unannounced live service, canceled. Bluepoint, God of War, live service, canceled. Bungie is making Marathon. Still on the docket.
Someday.
Bungie was making a game called Payback. It was canceled last year. Firesprite was making a Twisted Metal. It was canceled last year. Firewalk released Concord. It was released and canceled in 10 days. Guerrilla Games has a online Horizon title. Still don't know what's going on there. Haven Studios still has a game called Fair Games, which they've shown off. Most people forgot it exists. Still hasn't been canceled as far as we know. Insomniac had Spider-Man: The Great Web canceled. We have no idea when. It was part of the leak. We don't even know if that's really part of the 12 either. London Studios had a AAA new IP fantasy multiplayer title. It was canceled last year and the studio shut down. Naughty Dog, Last of Us Factions Online was canceled two years ago.
That could have actually been good because the combat in Last of Us 2 is so good.
At this point, you talk about the buying, establishing, building of a studio and everything for Concord alone, and then you look at all of these other games, and Sony has probably lost billions now at this point on nothing.
Yeah, I don't.
Nothing.
When we talk about like Sony having kind of a bleak few years ahead, it's often like, Sony's at the top of the game. And it's like, yeah, I mean, if you're only looking at them when they're riding at the top of the wave, it's like, yeah, everybody looks like they're going to be there forever.
I feel like I've been saying this, we've been saying, like, Sony's house is not in order, but nobody wants to see that. If Microsoft's whole gaming division, Xbox division, is a flaming dumpster fire, then Sony's is the internal carbon monoxide leak just spilling into your house, completely unknowns to you.
Well, you know why no one wants to look at Sony as that bad is how long ago did the PS4 come out?
Dude, it was 4 years ago. Over 4 years ago now.
No, I'm talking about the PS4.
Oh, 4. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 5 was 4 years ago, but 4 was what, 2013, 2014?
Yeah, 2013, 2014, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
10. We're talking 10, 11 years ago. A decade ago.
So all the people who are in their early 20s, Sony's great years for them was their prime fixation years where they had all the time but not the money and they obsessed. And so now there's no world for them where Sony isn't dominant. Now, in their defense, a whole bunch of people our age, that was Xbox for them. The 360 had its dominant years to where like they just couldn't accept it, and Xbox has survived through 2 generations now on that goodwill. Still somehow.
Yeah, and people think, they're not surviving, they're floundering. I'm like, they're still selling double what the Wii U sold, so.
Yeah, they're still alive. They're still here. Sony is Sony going to be able to write, like we've said this before. The PS5 might be a flubbed generation as it stands right now. A flubbed console. This generation might be flubbed. We'll see. It could also they could just double the amount of time this generation is around, and then
and the only
really
thing,
kill it in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
But Sony is in for. I don't know if the PS6 is going to do very well at all because the PS5 has sort of floundered.
I think the thing is Sony's in this position where, like, again, nobody wants to think that they're actually in trouble. No one thinks they are in trouble. Nobody smells or detects the carbon monoxide link because it's odorless and colorless. Your wife won't even know what hit her. Uh, yes, it's a Red Letter Media Phantom Menace review quote.
It's one of those it's one of those deep cuts for the internet. You don't think Red Letter Media is deep cut anymore, but we're all in internet age, we're all old as hell.
But but yeah, my point is that the reason people don't see it is because they had Horizon 2 and God of War Ragnarok, and they had Spider-Man 2 come out, and they're going to have Ghost of Yotei come out, and Intergalactic will come out. They had good, well received, good selling cross gen, or just a couple good first person. They had the Demon Souls remake. They had a Returnal. They had these single player games to sort of carry that weight. The thing is what's really going to hurt them now is that those games are done, which means you're at least half a decade away from any of the follow-ups to those games, except
And
maybe
all of their live
Insomniac.
services games have been
And yeah, and so many of them were put into this live service thing, and those are gone. So now your release schedule is going to get sparse for Sony. It is going to start, because like even last year, like, oh, it's a bit of a sparse year for us, the year with Helldivers 2 and Astrobot and whatever.
well,
Not
last year was kind of sparse
for Sony, but
comparatively speaking.
it could get worse though, because we have
Oh, I think it is going to get worse. Yeah.
we have Ghost of Yotei, and we have Intergalactic, which is probably 26 at the earliest, probably. We don't know where that Venom spin-off game is from Insomniac. Ted Price just announced his retirement the other day. Good for him, by the way. Like there's really nothing there. He's just like, I've been in this industry for 30 plus years. I just wanted to retire, and cool. But it's like, we don't know where their Venom spin-off game is. We don't know where their Wolverine game is, because they've been dark on that for
I forgot about the Wolverine game. Yeah.
right. And Insomniac's a good studio. Thank God Insomniac wasn't put on a live service project, for some strange reason.
Bet you they tried.
They're probably no, you're right. They did. Well, they did try. There was Spider-Man, the Great Web.
Oh, well,
That
yeah,
was
that's
canceled.
right. Yeah.
Some people say that that's not part of the 12 live service games Jim Ryan was talking about, because the project was internally canceled before it was ever announced. So a lot of people say that technically can't, but logically speaking, that should not be part of the 12 games he said were in development, because that game was canceled before it was ever announced, like internally canceled. So maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but wild to me that they even tried with Insomniac. Hey, you should make a big multiplayer live service Spider-Man game, because that'll go really well. I think live services should work. We're doing like everyone's doing 12 live service games, and
Uncle Jim, you're making me afraid.
well, they're like, "Really, right, you can make me like, I don't know why he's Australian, but you can make me a live service game, yeah, right, yeah. If you don't make me a live service game, I'm gonna cut out your kidneys. I'm gonna feed them to your children. You ain't gonna even know. Your family won't
He
even
sounds a lot
recognize
like
you."
the Poke Poachers.
Right?
Um,
Look, man, I need to make a lot of money. I got a little tiny wanker. My wife, she's upset with me. She's leaving me. So I'm taking it out on all of you. You all gonna make me a lot of money.
Jim, I'm sorry. I hope you're hung like a horse.
I hope you're not.
I for the last couple minutes of the podcast, we should cover a little bit of the EA thing, because EA also fell real terribly short.
Yeah, I mean, the one
There's not a
everyone's
whole lot of detail to jump
yeah.
into here, but
A lot of the things everyone's talking about is the fact that Dragon Age Veilguard failed to live up. They missed their sales expectations by 50%, which was apparently 3 million. They expected the game to sell 3 million copies in 2 months. It only sold 1.5 million. And someone was saying, like, wait, that's a fourth of the lifetime sales of the last, game. Like, you were expecting them to sell a fourth of Inquisition's lifetime sales in 2 months. So fair. I think that's a fair assessment from the public, to be like, that's a little like absurd. But then again, RPGs are tend to be front loaded. To be fair in the other direction, but
well, that and I mean, EA sort of have a reputation for insane goals?
absolutely. The other thing too, and the one that I is actually surprising, truly surprising. Apparently, Football Club 25, which is FIFA, what they call FIFA because they don't do
Yeah,
FIFA no more. Football Club failed to meet sales expectations. That's way more devastating to EA than BioWare.
that's
BioWare
genuinely
failed.
scary.
Yeah, BioWare failing to look expectations is like, oh, good. Now we have a reason. Now I have a reason to shut them down. That's all that's going to happen. BioWare's cooked. I mean, I hope they can get their next Mass Effect game out, but like the director of Veilguard already quit the company. They quit like a few days before this came out, so um
There's
BioWare's
no
cooked.
way they shut BioWare completely down, right?
BioWare's cooked. Well, apparently yesterday they were saying they haven't even entered full production on the next Mass Effect game. They've been doing support studio work for other games. Like they still haven't been greenlit for full production on it. And I'm like, oh, now they
Oh,
maybe they never will be.
that
um
seems bad. That seems
yeah.
bad.
BioWare is going to be if BioWare if they're lucky at this point is going to be support, and if they can get to some point where they get that Mass Effect game out, it has to outsell every Mass Effect game ever very quickly, or BioWare is just gone at that point. They may even just shut them down and just transfer the employees to other studios. But again, this means
Mm.
nothing to EA. EA like farts and they'll be like, oh well, okay, whatever. I guess BioWare is not worth it anymore. Time to get rid of them. Football Club, failing to meet expectations. I don't understand. That is devastating to them.
Well, I wonder if it means that they're going to go back to the drawing table or back to the negotiation table with FIFA. Because the
Mm.
whole reason they got rid of the FIFA thing is because they didn't want to pay FIFA the fee for the FIFA name.
Right.
But
Unfortunately, that would only give FIFA a bigger position of strength.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. But also, like, how do you screw that up? FIFA is the largest soccer organization in the world. They're recognized in every country in the world. Like, you didn't even have to advertise. It's just called FIFA. Like,
do you think the name really held a lot of weight there?
I do.
Because
I do. A
EA,
generic name
I
like
think
football club.
EA Sports FC 25.
Yeah, I don't think it works. If FIFA is just so recognizable to this day, when I have friends that were big soccer players all through like grade school up into college and stuff, they still refer to any sports game that's a soccer game as FIFA, no matter what it's called. So, you know, yeah, let's play FIFA. Yeah,
I would have been cheeky and found a way to call my game not FIFA. Like it would never be say FIFA, but you could abbreviate it as FIFA still.
I, yeah, I don't know how you do that without getting uh
Yeah. Well, like, we
sued into
never it's never
oblivion.
called FIFA. It's just called, Football Interactive, blah, blah, blah.
Football International.
Fighting Association. Like
What does
it's
FIFA
FIFA.
actually stand for?
I don't know.
I'm gonna look that up while
But yeah, this is definitely because FIFA's their golden goose and Madden's their golden goose too. They actually had record sales for college football last year, but
interesting.
apparently, interestingly, I guess that wasn't enough really to offset some of these losses here. Um, but yeah,
Nope.
the two golden gooses is football and football, football and football,
Football.
and part of me wonders like, did people just finally freaking realize that you don't need to spend $70 every year for a game that there's no way it can be getting major upgrades in today's day and age when game development takes so much time, costs so much. Like you got to be just paying for minimal upgrades. I don't play EA Sports games, so I don't really know. But I'm like, there's no way this ish is.
Well, they're playing for the new rosters, new teams
But it's
who got
like,
traded.
well, then just DLC this thing, man. Like what the hell?
Oh, but they know people will buy the new one. And people
Do
who
they
play
though?
those
I'm
games
like,
play
here's the
those
thing.
games a lot.
But here's the thing, though. At this point in time, I'm like, have people finally figured out like this is a waste of my money
Maybe,
to
but I
keep doing
also
this?
think
Like, you
sports in
could
general is
just,
going to decline.
yeah, maybe. I'm like, you could just offer me, a $20 DLC or something, and I'll just pay for the DLC for the roster update every year. Because
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know. Is it finally time? Have we finally reached that point? Or is it like you said, FIFA, the name carried a lot of weight. Sports is just sort of on a downturn, as far as like just general popularity or whatever.
FIFA stands for International Federation of Association Football, by the way. Just in
Hmm,
Spanish, it looks like Federación Internacional de Fútbol Association,
hmm.
FIFA.
Well, there you go.
So Spanish, I'm guessing.
I don't know. Spanish, Latin, something. I don't. Well, either
It's
probably Spanish.
headquartered in Switzerland, though. So I don't know if that's Spanish. It looks like Spanish, but it's headquartered in Switzerland.
Well, um, well, it's not Swedish.
It sure doesn't seem like it. Huh. Anyway, the point is yes, I think FIFA is the most. It's recognizable enough that it hurt them at least.
Hmm.
I would imagine at least a little bit, but
Yeah.
possibly a lot of bit. You're looking for FIFA 2025, and you don't see
Here's the thing.
FIFA.
I don't have a pulse on the youths anymore. I don't work in a I don't work in the education system anymore. But my opinion from when I quit, which was like 7 years ago now, um, sports were kind of lessened. Like some kids still did do football and baseball, but not to the level that they did in the 90s at all. Um, and there
I'm-
just wasn't a general interest in joining sports leagues nearly as much. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no way to gauge numbers on this, but just my overall view from a teaching standpoint was that it seemed like kids weren't as interested in sports as they were when
It's
I
not.
was a child.
It's not the playing of the sports that has gone necessarily. It's that like going
The
to
organ
games and
the
being
organizational aspect of it.
yeah, like I mean, going to a stadium and seeing a game is not as popular as it used to be.
Well, I think there's also, and I remember wondering this as I was like when I was watching football, mostly for some students at the time. And it always was intriguing to me how much people would rally behind, say, a quarterback. And then when
Hmm.
that quarterback leaves the team, suddenly that guy's a big piece of shit, F him, like he's
Right.
the worst person in the world. Or, and then you're kind of like, okay, so do you care about the athlete at all? Or do you only care about the team? And like, well, no, it's all about the team. And I'm like, okay, but say maybe quarterback left because he got a better offer elsewhere, and the team he was playing on didn't want to match that salary, right? So he leaves. Now, granted, I think athletes are insanely overpaid. Don't get me wrong, but your brand, your team owner doesn't care about your team. Like like say if you're in LA, like the owner of the Clippers notoriously doesn't care about the Clippers. He's there to make whatever money he can. The minute he gets a good player, this is actually in the past because Steve Ballmer and other people bought it and have actually done something with the Clippers. But point is like for many, many years, Clippers were always just sort of like basically a glorified farm team
Yeah.
where, oh, someone up and coming is good. They get put on the Clippers and then they're good. So he immediately sells them to someone else to personally make some profit. Right.
Well,
So it's
I
like,
don't
okay,
think
well, your brand is all just a big money making scheme in the end. So it's kind of like, how do you become fans of a team when the people who own that team are only will do anything in their
geography.
power? Yeah, geography. It's like, I don't know.
Now, I'm not going to go too far into it, but athletes, or like sports stars, absolutely earn every penny that they get paid because
It's
those
what
like
it's
owners,
what
team
people.
owners, make lots and lots of money off of them. And yeah, no, I'm all about
Oh,
the
don't get me
athlete
wrong.
biz.
I'm not saying that the people who own the teams don't get paid way more
Paying
than they should.
$300 to go to a football game sucks balls. Now, granted, when I say other sports are losing a lot of favor, this does not include soccer. Soccer is still jam
Mm,
packed, super popular. It's only getting more popular in the states. Um, so I do actually think the FIFA name getting dropped is what screwed them
mm.
on that.
Yeah,
But couldn't
interesting.
happen to a worse guy, so I guess hard to decide whether or not.
Yeah, the Bond villain that runs EA.
Yeah. So it's hard to feel too bad about it, but then at the
No,
same
I
time,
don't feel bad about for him at all. But like, here's the thing: I've already seen it already. You know, I made a comment on Blue Sky, and people like, maybe all these talent Bioware people can finally get better jobs. I'm like, where? I haven't replied, but it's like, where?
right
Like
now, yeah,
24,000, 36,000 people got laid off. Nobody's hiring. Like what? Like EA, if EA drops BioWare, that's not good for anyone at BioWare because there's nowhere to go.
yeah, it's rough. It's real rough out there.
So, frankly, I don't know. Uh,
I don't
I
think
guess it's
EA is going to drop BioWare. I don't think they're going to. BioWare's their sort of like last team that has any sort of prestige,
yeah.
and that does still count for something. Like they might, maybe they'll sell BioWare.
Mm, yeah, Microsoft would probably would have bought them in the past, but now that's probably a bad idea too.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, it just means Sony. Sony seems like the person who's on the hunt now.
I don't know.
Um,
They shut down studios last year too, so
yeah, but that doesn't mean they won't buy any new studios within a year.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Well, BioWare's already been through the ringer as far as live service. They tried to make Anthem, um,
Oof.
so yeah. I
On-
mean,
it's like, and on that note,
I don't know.
Anthem.
Look, man. If like, well, what should they do? What should you do? I'm like, well, here's the thing. Like, I don't think BioWare needs to make the next biggest RPG. They don't need to make the bet in the next Elder Scrolls, the next Witcher, Cyberpunk, whatever. Um, all BioWare should do at this point is make a smaller scale game, make an RPG that's 25 hours long. You know, do something like what Obsidian's done with Outer Worlds.
Right.
Make a somewhat smaller scale game that's well liked. It doesn't break the bank. Lock in the feature and scope real fast, like right at the beginning. Don't change it. Just do what you're most known for. It's although it wasn't a short game. It didn't, it wasn't anything that took a small amount of time. Machine Games Indiana Jones turned out very well. Like apparently the sales are very good, the critical acclaim was very good. And even though it was first person and a lot of people were sort of against that, but I'm like, it is what Machine Games was known for. It's what they're good at.
Yeah.
And they're experts at it, and they turned out arguably everyone's favorite Indiana Jones game.
Well, I can't think
So,
of one that stands up to it.
well, Fate of Atlantis, but it's a point and click. So it's like a different genre, really. So
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you that.
the thing, so at the end of the day, to me, I'm just like, okay, so here's the thing. Like BioWare, instead of trying to make a next huge game, don't have them make a huge game. Just have them make a game that they're experts at doing. That's not super long. It's not super huge, but just sort of like just give us a hit song. You don't give me a hit album. Just give me a hit song, and we'll go from
Right.
there. And we'll slowly work your way back up from there. So, and maybe that's what Dragon Age Veilguard was supposed to be, but from the rumors, and we don't really know, it sounds like Dragon Age Veilguard was at one point supposed to be a live service game, and then Anthem
Hmm.
happened, and then it got turned. They had to basically Veilguard is the sort of turned around. Like we took a project that was supposed to be live service and turned it into a single player game, and that's what Veilguard is. And I know the fan base is split on it on how they feel about the game in
Yeah,
total.
some people really, really love it.
Yeah, like it's a bit of a split on how longtime fans feel, but I don't know, 1.5 million in 2 months. That's not bad.
I Everything's so skewed because of what, like, the executives seem to have this pie in the sky desire. Nothing can just be like doing well. It has to be like dominating.
Yeah,
And if it's not dominating, if it's not shocking, then it's considered like a failure in a weird way. Like no one's happy with something that just did well. And I don't know, that seems like a cultural thing that's happened over the last, say, 10 years that I don't know how you reconcile that, because we're going to have, I would argue that the next couple of years is going to be a weird lean time in games because 36,000 people got laid off, and where's all those games, uh, not to say that there won't be good stuff, just to say like it's going to be leaner than what we're used to. And I wonder if that's going to reset expectations. I don't think we're going for a crash, but I do think we're going for a correction.
Yeah.
So on that note, though, I don't think we missed any of the big news, but we do have producers to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week was P1 Falchion. Or if we're saying your name wrong, please go ahead and correct us. I will fix it in the next episode. And our producers for this episode are Dragon Wolf Makoto, Austenite, Zybernite, Skronami, Kroy35, Hyper Viper 89, LCL Mayhem, and Ziggy Z. Thank you, dudes. We'll catch you next time.
Later, dudes.